Welcome, everyone, to the PCS Like a Pro show. I'm your host, Megan Harless, as always, and I'm glad you're joining us today. We've got a really great show lined up for you. But before we get into that, we're going into the holiday season and all the other seasons regarding PCSing as well. So we are in claim season where everyone has unpacked from the summer and you have filed your claims. Remember, it's 180 days from your date of delivery, and that date should be listed in DPS under shipment management, so you can go back and remember what day it was delivered at, calculate your 180 days to know when you need to file by. If you miss that 180-day time frame, you do have up to 2 years to file with the MCO, but it is at a depreciated value at that point. So make sure you don't miss those claim filing deadlines. We are also fast approaching orders season, where everybody is going to start getting their notification, either what we call their soft notification or their verbal notification, and then their hard orders, their official orders coming in, and people learning where they're going to be moving to this summer, this upcoming year. So just a reminder, once you get your official orders, you can do nothing with your soft notification besides start researching your location. Once you get your official orders where it has your orders number on it, get into DPS and get your move set up. When they start booking those summer shipments, you want your shipment sitting there in the queue. So as they start booking, your shipment is ready to go and can get booked, and you have a better chance of getting the requested dates that you want for your move, and you're not trying to play that wiggle room game of, can we shift, can we move, can we, maybe instead of doing the government move, do ourselves, because they can't make your exact dates. So as soon as you get your official orders, make sure you get into DPS, make sure you get your move set up so that way it's ready to go when they start booking those summer shipments. So all that said and done about our favorite seasons that we're all in, we're going to dive right on into today. So if you've been around for a little bit, you've seen Michelle on here a few times as our resident expert loan person. So Michelle, welcome back to the show. And can you just take a minute for those that are joining us for the first time, don't know who you are, just give us a little brief about who you are.
Absolutely. So I'm Michelle Crumley, and I'm the military client and community liaison. That's a lot of words for Caliber Home Loans, and which means I get to do a lot of educating, whether it is internal with our team members or whether it's external with real estate agents and referral partners. I've got a little over 20 years now in the mortgage industry, a whole bunch of different roles, from originator, branch manager, coach, trainer, and now liaison. And then I'm also a 30, as of Wednesday this week, 30-year military veteran spouse. I know, I can't believe it. We just celebrated our 30th anniversary this week, and are still trying to figure out what this great thing called life is all about. It's awesome.
Yes, no, and congratulations. So we will hit 17 years. When this plays, will be 17 years Friday.
Nice.
That we'll hit. So congratulations on that. So we got a lot of questions. You guys have been following. We are kind of breaking down the VA loan process into detail to help you be more educated about the VA loan that you have to utilize, how it should be used, and your options with it. So when you go to buy a home, the details you need to know. And maybe you use it to help arm your realtor, help arm your offer, help make it a little bit stronger. And today we're talking about the refinancing aspect of things and what you can do with that VA loan when it comes to maybe looking at those types of options. So we're going to start first with talking about loan assumptions. First, what is a loan assumption?
So it's going to be a little different than refinancing. Mm-hmm. So an assumption, and we have not talked about assumptions in over a decade now. So this is something that a lot of individuals have never heard of, don't have experience with, don't even really understand, right, what it is. So one of the key benefits of the VA loan, with it being a government loan, is that all government loans are allowed to be assumed. And what that means is either when you go to sell, so we'll first talk about the selling side. When I go to sell my house, I could allow somebody to assume the loan that I have versus having to go get their own first mortgage. That becomes beneficial, right, in a scenario where you have rising interest rates. Why else, right, Why else would you want someone's loan versus going and getting your own unless they had a very attractive interest rate? VA interest rates a year ago were running, 2.5, 2.25, and people were like, this is awesome. And today we're running close to 6%, if not more, right? So the idea that I could go and assume, let's say, Megan, you were selling your house and you had a 2.25 interest rate and it was a VA loan and you were allowing an individual to assume it. How nice would that be for me to come and assume your loan versus going and getting my own financing at 6%? Okay, so that's the gist. Now, there are a couple of things that you've got to really be aware of with that. The first is that when you are talking about an assumption, you are assuming that person's balance at that time, right? So let's say you are selling your house for $400,000, but your mortgage is only currently, your balance is only $300,000. I'm coming to and I'm interested in assuming your loan. I would have to, you and I would work with your servicer of your VA loan because they would then want to credit qualify me to make sure that I can afford to take over your loan. Okay. If they say, yeah, no problem, then I assume your name that's on the note comes off and my name goes on at the 2.25 with the 300,000 that you have left, and whatever that monthly payment is. However, you are selling your house for 400. Your balance right now is only 300,000. So I've got to come up with either the difference, that $100,000 in cash at closing, or through some secondary financing that I set up with a different lender, right? But how nice to have, 100,000 or 75,000 at a 6% rate or more versus having 400,000 at 6%. So it allows, in the right situation, for an individual to come in and assume the seller's loan at a lower interest rate as long as they can afford and have a way of covering the difference between what is owed and what you're selling the house for to make the seller whole.
So that difference, so that's on me then to either have the cash or to go get a different loan. I can't roll that extra amount up into the loan I'm assuming.
Nope, that loan is done on the books. All you're doing is switching somebody's name, in essence, on that note to say that I'm now responsible. You are no longer responsible for the note.
Okay.
What is important. Yep. And so it can be very attractive, right? And as a seller to be able to say, hey, I've got a VA loan and my interest rate is 2.5. And I'm willing to discuss an assumption if you can come up with the difference, right? But there is something that we on the VA side have to be very aware of is when you allow someone to assume your loan. When you did a VA loan, there are two components to that. There's the note, the loan, the note and deed that you signed, right? And that note says that you owe ABC Mortgage $400,000 or $300,000, whatever the original loan amount was. And at the same time, VA used your entitlement to guarantee that loan number. So when you allow an assumption, you always want to make sure, if you want your entitlement back, that I would make sure that the person that's assuming your loan is a veteran and they have their entitlement, enough entitlement to substitute theirs for yours. Because what can happen is this. If I go to assume your loan, Megan, so you've got your loan out there. It was originally, let's say you originally used, your original loan amount was $350,000 and you use the entitlement necessary for that. I come in and I assume your loan. My name substitutes for yours on the note. But let's say I'm not a veteran or I am, but you didn't ask me to substitute my entitlement for yours.
Mm-hmm.
Your entitlement is still tied up with the
To that
VA
loan.
against that loan number because that loan number is still in existence.
Mm-hmm.
So you would want to ensure that the veteran that was assuming your loan would substitute their name and their entitlement for yours with the VA. So then you do not have any tie to that property via the note, nor through the entitlement that was used with the VA, and it frees your entitlement back up.
Yeah. No, I can see that being one of the big risks in doing a loan assumption piece is making sure you ask those questions and making sure they have that entitlement to be able to fill in
Do
so you
that
can have yours
substitution.
back. Yeah,
Yep.
no, absolutely. Is
It can
there,
be nasty to find out years down the line that you go to buy a house and you
yeah,
find out on your certificate of eligibility that you've got $50,000 of entitlement that is still tied up because the owners either still own it or even worse, had a foreclosure.
mhm.
And that VA paid out on it. And that paid out under your entitlement. So you absolutely want to make sure you get that done.
Yes, no, absolutely. Is there a situation where this would be very beneficial to do that loan assumption rather than making them just go get their own loan for the cost of the house?
Absolutely. When you are in competition, right, with other sellers and trying to sell your home and trying to make it look attractive, right,
Mhm.
to be able to say, I've got a, 2.25% interest rate, or even let's say it's 3.5, or today, let's even say it's 4. Let's say you did it, in January or something like that, right? And now it's time to move and you haven't paid down the loan a whole lot. So maybe there's only 5 grand, maybe even 10 grand that you've paid the loan down, if that much. Then how wonderful would it be to say, you could assume my loan at 4%. And really the difference is only a few $1,000s that you'd have to come out of pocket to make it whole from what's still owed to what you're selling it for. So it can be extremely attractive. Or for individuals, right, that have some cash, they've sold a home, so they've got the cash to make up that difference. But how nice to have a VA loan. In the future, they can do a VA interest rate reduction that we're going to talk about in a little while. They'll have all the benefits of the VA loan, right? So it's still an assumable loan. They don't have mortgage insurance. All of those things that are a benefit, they have all of that. And it's now in their name. And it can be lucrative for both individuals in the right situation.
Yeah, that's good to know. So let's go into talking about the refinancing. Before we get into the different types of refinancing, why would somebody look at refinancing their home?
Perfect. So assumption is really about a purchase, right? You're not going to use an assumption in a refinance situation. So as we change that discussion, refinancing is either one, to better the terms of your mortgage, right? So one, it might be that you're looking to, interest rates have gone down and you want to look at a lower interest rate. Maybe you have a 30-year and interest rates have gone down and you also want to go maybe to a 15-year to shorten the term. Maybe you're in an ARM and you want to go to a fixed rate, or you're in a fixed rate and you want to go to an ARM. I mean, like there's different reasons to change the terms that you might look at a refinance. Other reasons maybe you've had a divorce situation and you need to take somebody off of the loan. That would be a refinance. If you have to pay them out, right? So you're refinancing and paying them out. You're pulling equity out of the house to pay them off during that refinance. That's a cash out refinance. So taking somebody off the loan might be a reason you'd refinance. Maybe you want to do home improvements. Maybe you want to pay for some college education. I don't recommend it, but maybe you want to go on a vacation. Maybe you want to consolidate your debts, right? Maybe you had a period of time that you've now got under control, but you ran up some credit card debts maybe during COVID. And those credit cards, while you're handling the payments fine, the interest rates are higher than what a mortgage rate is. So what if you could use some of your equity that's in your house, do a refinance, pay off those other debts that are at a higher interest rate, and just have your mortgage, right, at that lower interest rate. So there are a lot of different reasons that you might look at that as an option. And then working with a really knowledgeable loan officer that can talk to you about all the different types of refinances that are out there that would help you meet that goal.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we're going to get into the different types of refinancing options that are out there. So we talked a little bit about that first one, the cash out refinance option. So what is this, and when would this be a good choice to look at this route for refinancing?
So as we all know, right, like let's say even if you made a down payment when you bought your house, that becomes equity in the home. When we talk about equity, that is the amount that the house is worth that you don't have a debt against. So, and you earn equity in a couple of different ways, really in two. You earn equity by paying down your loan, right? Every month you're paying a little bit of principal, a lot of interest, but a little bit of principal. It's reducing the amount that you owe. So like every month you get you start to own, one ceiling fan. And then maybe the next month you get to own, one door or doorknob, depending on how expensive your doorknobs are, right? So you're building equity in the house by paying your loan down. And then you also build equity by having the value of the home go up, the appreciation, which we've saw a dramatic increase in home values over the last 2 years, right? So if I bought a house at $400,000 and I've paid it down to $350,000, that's $50,000 of equity that I've made on that home. And let's say now the home is worth $500,000. So that's another, right? If I bought it at 4 and it's now worth 5, that's $100,000 of equity that I now have. For a combined between the two, I owe $350,000 and the home's now worth 5. I have equity standpoint at that point of $150,000. That's awesome. But the only way to get your hands on that $150,000 of equity is if you sell, you get the money outright, or I can borrow against it. I can borrow against it to pull that equity out. Now, when I do that, I owe more again on my house, right? So my equity position no longer exists. Maybe I pulled 100,000 of that out and I've refinanced, and now I only have $50,000 of equity left. My new loan's at $450,000 and the home is worth $500,000, right? So I have minimized my equity position by pulling money out. So that's what a cash out is. I go in a number of different ways. Either I do a loan, a cash out refinance where I take the existing loan, I pay it off, and I pull money out to do something else with. Or I could do a second mortgage or a home equity line of credit or a home equity loan. Those are kind of synonymous. To access that equity. Maybe I don't want to touch my original loan amount of 3.5%. 3.5% on my original loan. Today, rates are 6.5, some cases 7, depending on what type of loan you're doing. I'm like, oh, I don't want to touch my $350,000 loan at 3.5. Instead, I might say, okay, I want to pull out 50 grand or 75 grand. I'm going to go do a home equity line of credit, a second mortgage on the house just for that amount of money that I need. So the big part stays at a lower interest rate, and the amount that I took out is at that higher interest rate, but it's less, so it doesn't hurt as much. So cash out is truly, in one way or another, I am accessing the equity in my house to do something with it.
Yeah, no, that makes good sense. The other option, and then you mentioned it previously, is that rate reduction refinance. What is the rate reduction, and why would this option be used?
Okay, so outside of the cash out, you have what is called a standard rate term refinance. And that might be, again, maybe you're pulling somebody off the loan, and you're taking advantage of, you're not pulling any money out. You want a better rate and term. And maybe it's a conventional loan, and you're going to a VA, or maybe it's a conventional to conventional, but you are just trying to take advantage of the lower rate and term. That is a rate term refinance. You're not pulling money out. But VA has a special refinance that happens if you are a VA loan and you are refinancing it just for bettering the rate or term into another VA. So it's a VA loan refinanced into another VA loan, not to pull money out, just to take advantage of the interest rate reduction, and which is why it's called an IRRL. VA interest rate reduction loan, IRRRL, interest rate reduction loan. Yes, IRRL. So you will hear it called the VA IRRL, or you'll hear it called for short the VA Streamline. And that is what VA allows you to do, VA to VA, just to lower the interest rate. You've got to meet a certain threshold by VA standards, their net benefit that they want to see reached, and they will allow you to do that. And the benefit is you do not have to have appraisal, and you do not have to re-credit qualify. So you go through the loan process, but you do not have to substantiate. You don't have to provide pay stubs, LESs, bank statements, any of that. And you don't have to have a new appraisal. Awesome. And it streamlines the process. So that is that VA IRRL. So VA will allow you to do a VA IRRL, VA to VA, only to reduce the rate and term if you're meeting the net benefits. Then you could do a conventional to VA under their regular VA refinance, which is also what they use for that VA cash out, where you're actually pulling money out. That is both of those are full credit qualifying, new appraisals, all of those things that would have to be done.
Yeah, those extra steps with the appraisals and things always sounds like a headache to have to do, but in the end, they can really be beneficial and help the process. So for clarification, like a regular rate reduction, that's going from like a VA to conventional, some sort. But if it's VA to VA, then it's called the IRRL.
Yep. The VA Streamline, the VA IRRL. Yep.
Perfect. So we talked a lot about the different types of refinance options and the loan assumption when you're going to sell your home. What else do we need to know about these two categories of things? Anything that we haven't talked about yet?
So, one of the things when we have seen such an increase these days in the values of homes, a lot of people start thinking, oh, I've got all of this instant extra money because the value has gone up so much, that they start pulling out money, maybe not for the best financial reasons. And I would say, just don't get caught up on that. We know that values historically do go up, but while they are historically going up, they can fall. And your equity position changes as the value of the home changes. And anytime, even if you are doing a VA IRRL or a VA regular or VA cash out, there's closing costs that get rolled in. You are changing your equity position in that house for the worse, right? You're going to be giving up equity every time you do a refinance. So ensuring you're doing it for smart financial reasons. And then there are so many different options that are out there. I would tell you, when you're talking about refinancing, is really, again, working with a knowledgeable loan officer about VA loans, about home equity lines of credit and home equity loans, and be able to really show you all of the difference and explain it with clarity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And looking through those options, being able to know what your risk comfort level is when refinancing or doing the cash out option, can go a long way to determine, is this the right option for you? Should you do it? Maybe make it a rule of your house is, if it's an emergency that you definitely need something, or maybe just a remodel, upgrade, something to help if you plan to sell your home down the road, make it more, curb appealing to others.
Yeah.
And then
Well,
as you,
I would say too, right? Especially if you're pulling money out, you're doing that for a reason, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
But if you're doing just to get a lower rate, and VA actually requires the calculation be done on a EARL, on a streamline. But it is really good to take a look at how much the refinance is costing you. What are all of the costs that you are incurring versus how much you're saving on a monthly basis?
Mhm.
And for the most part, VA says they want to see you recoup the loss, how much you spent, by what you're saving within 3 years. And I agree. And especially depending on the environment, if rates are significantly coming down, you can do that refinance. And then all of a sudden rates are still going down and you refinance again. You've just spent a lot in two different closing costs on those two different refinances. So just being really smart about that and understanding what the savings are going to be, what the costs are, and how long it takes you to recoup it. The faster you recoup it, the smarter the move. The longer it takes you, then we need to start talking about what are the things that can happen. Because statistically, you only have a loan, even though you may have the house for 30 years, a loan is typically refinanced every 5 to 7 years, or sold or paid off. So the chance that you're going to have that loan for longer than 7 years is unlikely. So you sure don't want the benefit not to be greater than the cost.
Right. So knowing that, is there a limit to the amount of times you could refinance, or could you refinance multiple times in multiple different ways? Like maybe the first time's an EARL, the second time's a cash out, and then
VA
third
likes
time's an EARL again.
VA likes 6 months. They generally like to
Okay.
see 6 months between refinances. So you couldn't do it refinance this month and then 2 months or 3 months from now do it again. They do want at least to see a 6-month on-time payments. Things are copacetic, the dust has settled before you refinance again. But no, there isn't like a limit on how many times you can do it, just in the time frame.
Okay. And then you talk about also like closing costs when you refinance. Is there like a set percentage that people should be prepared to pay, or how is that closing cost kind of configured at that point?
They are very similar in nature to the closing costs that you paid when you actually bought the house.
Okay.
So depending on whether you have to have a credit report or not, that's awesome. From the standpoint of your VA funding fee, if you're doing a VA refinance, right, refinancing it into or keeping it a VA loan, if it's an EARL and you owe the VA funding fee, it's only 0.5%, which is lovely. The VA EARL's interest rate reduction, right, program only has, if you owe a funding fee, it's only 0.5%. The other VA refinances, it is the standard subsequent user of 3.6%.
Okay.
So then you have to, does it make sense, right? Does it make sense? That's a huge fee, especially if you're talking about refinancing. That's just eating up equity. So it has to make really good sense. So I would say you want to plan for, outside of the VA funding fee, outside of maybe the appraisal, and you won't have to repay your owner's title insurance. You won't have those things per se.
Right.
But I would plan on 2% of the loan amount that you could expect in closing costs, and or the reset up of new escrow accounts.
And that should be cash that you have on hand at the table to be able to write a check or be able to
refinance. You can roll in if you want.
even better. That's
Yes.
amazing. So that can
Yes.
definitely help as well. So it's not like when you're closing on your home, you need some cash at the table for that piece. You can roll that into your refinance.
You sure can.
That's amazing news to know too. At the same time, sitting here, I'm just like, but that's more cash I got to plan for to have on hand. So knowing it can be rolled into it, I think goes a long way to definitely help. So we talked about a lot of good things. I know a lot of people are going to have some more questions that come up during their process. So during all of that, knowing that Caliber, knowing that your team is really the VA loan expert on everything, how can they reach out to you?
They can reach us at PCS@caliberhomeloans.com. Really simple. That comes directly to me. And I'll get back to you. And I love answering questions. I absolutely love it. So don't hesitate to reach out with any questions.
Yes, no, definitely. Michelle and her team are phenomenal. I will tell you, I sent them probably 1.5 million questions as we were going through this process last spring, and being able to get clear answers, being able to have somebody that really held my hand and walked me through the process as I didn't know anything, definitely helped and made a big difference in knowing what to expect, knowing how the process was to go, and knowing that there wasn't anything hidden I was going to learn through discovery of buying a house. Definitely makes a difference. So I will tell you guys, we say it a lot, shop around. If you feel like your realtor or the lender you're talking to, if they seem a little iffy, they're not solid on their answers for the questions you may have for your VA home loan, definitely shop around, definitely reach out to Michelle and Caliber and her team, because I will tell you, they definitely got it down and know what they're doing. So Michelle, thank you for taking time out of your day and joining us.
My absolute pleasure, guys, as always, and definitely have a very happy holidays. Merry Christmas.
Yes, everyone watching, thank you for joining us today. Join us next week. I want to have another show lined up for you as well as we go into the holiday season and finish out this year. So Merry Christmas, everybody. And until then, remember, take care of each other.